Welcome to Testosterothon, 28 movies so manly they'll give you a war you won't believe. First Blood is the first film in the Rambo series, and honestly, I almost did include this series as a part of Testosterothon, since because I had already included Rocky, it seems like that's an awful lot of Stallone, but I decided to include it because the Rocky films and the Rambo films are very different, though they do get a somewhat similar quality arc. First Blood is based on a novel, though they changed a few things. More on that in a bit. It's said that First Blood saved Stallone's career, and that just might be true. Although Rocky and Rocky II were hits, all of his non-Rocky movies at the time were either really bad, or they just didn't make any money. Films like Fist, Paradise Alley, Nighthawks, and Victory failed to capture people's attention the way Rocky and Rocky II did, so it was starting to look like he might be a one-trick pony. But First Blood turned it all around for him. It's funny because after this, Stallone would do more Rocky and more Rambo movies, but still a lot of the others were a mess. I mean, First Blood and Rocky III came out in the same year, so that was a great year for Stallone. But then he followed those up with Rhinestone and a small role in the travesty that was Staying Alive. Damn. Anyway, in First Blood, Stallone plays John Rambo, a Vietnam War vet who starts off looking for the only other surviving member of his platoon, only to find the man has died of cancer following exposure to Agent Orange, making Rambo the only survivor. He drifts into a small town nearby and is quickly picked up by the sheriff, who drops him off at the town's limits and makes it very clear that Rambo isn't welcome in his town. He even goes so far as to tell him to get a haircut and a bath. Rambo starts walking back into town to try to get some dinner, and he gets arrested for vagrancy. He's taken to the police station where he's treated horribly, seemingly for no reason other than he's a scruffy-looking guy and they want none of that. He refuses to cooperate with the police, which makes matters worse, and as they abuse him further, it triggers his flashbacks, which sends him into full-on war mode. He subdues the police and escapes, stealing a motorcycle and hightailing it out of the city. The police try to go after him, but he manages to ditch the motorcycle and hide in the woods nearby. Now, you'd think at this point they'd give up, maybe do a small search party for a few hours, then pack it up and go home, saying, you know what, it's not really worth it for a guy who they were only really booking for vagrancy and who escaped custody. You notify the state police, and that's it. But the sheriff, Teasel, seems like he's out of his mind and really wants to capture Rambo, even calling in dogs and helicopters. And one of the psychotic deputies fires at Rambo when he was only supposed to spot him. From the point that Rambo snaps and starts hitting cops to the end of the movie is almost one long action scene broken up only here and there with Rambo's old commanding officer, Colonel Troutman, comes to town to try to straighten things out. But that's not to say that this movie is just a big dumb action movie. If you've never seen First Blood, but you've heard of Rambo, you might imagine a shirtless guy with huge muscles shooting dozens of faceless goons with a machine gun. A movie with loads of explosions, a huge body count, and an unapologetic celebration of carnage. But really, this is a movie that starts off slow and quiet, and even in its action scenes, it's subtle and nuanced. Only one person dies in the entire film. Rambo accidentally causes the insane deputy's death as he's being fired on from the helicopter. He attempts to defend himself by throwing a rock at the helicopter, which causes the man to fall out and die. He feels bad about it, and he tries to talk the cops into letting it go, saying one man died, it wasn't his fault, and he doesn't want any more death. But they continue to come after him. Now obviously he should have given himself up, but it could be argued that he never should have been arrested in the first place. Rambo fights with cunning and traps, using his knife, his bare hands, and the local terrain to his advantage, always wounding and maiming instead of killing. In the end of the film, when he does have a machine gun, he uses it to target power transformers and knock out lights, and the one person he does shoot survives. What I'm saying here is that this movie isn't about violence at all. Rambo is a haunted character who loves his country and fought for it, but instead of being honored, was spit upon and became a drifter, for which he is hassled by a shitty bully of a cop, simply because he wanted to get something to eat, and the cop doesn't like dudes with long hair and dirty clothes. What's interesting is that what makes the movie work, it's mostly told through other characters. Rambo barely talks other than at the conclusion. It really adds to the feel of the film. What's nuts is that originally the film was going to be over 3 hours long and full of exposition and monologuing from Rambo. But Stallone hated the original cut of the movie and helped the filmmakers edit it down to its current form, which shows me that he's a pretty smart guy. I just can't get over the fact that someone who clearly knows so much about what makes a good movie would make Rhinestone. The ending was changed from the book, as Rambo died in the end of the book, but interestingly, they did film that version, and test audiences didn't like it. It was too depressing, which I think is right, because it wouldn't necessarily work as a tragedy for film. That being said, on the machismo meter, this one ranks an 8. It's manly as hell, and Rambo's survival knife is so awesome that knife makers started making exact replicas to sell, which became very popular. It's not a 10, mostly because of Teasel, who's a wimpy villain who mostly whines about how no one will help him arrest the bad man who dared make his town slightly more smelly with his presence. Get over yourself, dude. For the real score, though, I'm going to give it a 9. It's not a perfect movie, but it's close to it. First Blood is subtle and nuanced, and it'll make you think about the way our veterans were treated during this era.